Venezuelan government extends energy emergency law by 1 year. Protests against COVID-19 restrictions kill 3 in Gabon. And Mali's Prime Minister says he is willing to hold talks with insurgents. Hello and welcome to teleSUR. I'm Doris Polo in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the south. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro extended the energy emergency declared to recover the country's oil industry for 12 months in the face of the coercive measures imposed by the United States. Minister of Oil Tariq El-Aissami presented the proposal to extend the emergency, and the Ali Rodriguez Araque Presidential Commission established to recover the oil industry.
This is the decree by which I extend the energy emergency of Venezuela's oil industry and the Ali Rodriguez Commission for another 12 months, in order to continue the efforts to extend the declaration of the energy emergency and proceed to take the corresponding and, I would say, bold measures for its comprehensive recovery. In the scope of the anti-blockade law and the new beneficial contracts for the Republic and for international investors, we are moving forward in negotiations with companies from all over the world. And I want to tell investors from the United States that the doors of Venezuela are open for capital investment in the oil, gas, and petrochemical sectors to work in a win-win partnership.
Staying in Venezuela, the government has begun the distribution of Sputnik 5 vaccine doses to its citizens. Health Minister Carlos Alvarado highlighted that necessary logistics are in place to guarantee the conservation and proper storage of the shots as they are distributed across the country. Personnel have also received training in handling and administering the vaccines in 60 hospitals throughout the nation. At least 70% of the population will be immunized this year. In the first stage, the Russian vaccines will be administered to medical and health personnel, social workers, the military, police, mayors, governors, and members of the National Assembly. Mass vaccination will begin in April.
34 promoting teams have been established. Phase 2 of the swearing-in of committees and promotional and municipal teams, we are already in that phase. And phase 3 of the national plenary meetings of the 33 teams of social movements, committees and promotional teams, and the largest number of leaders from each of those social sectors.
Protests were held in the Brazilian state of Sao Paulo on Friday in rejection of the suspension of economic aid to mitigate the financial impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. The mobilizations are being led by the homeless workers movement. Protesters blocked roads to demand the government, led by Jair Bolsonaro, restore the economic aid offered during the pandemic. They stressed that extreme poverty has increased by 12.8% during the pandemic. The president cut economic aid for vulnerable citizens, even though it was endorsed by Congress. We have more stories coming up. Don't go away. Welcome back. In Ecuador, the National Electoral Council has concluded the vote count for the first round of the presidential election, confirming Andrés Araújo's victory with 32.72% of the ballots, followed by Guillermo Lasso, who secured 19.74%. According to the results, the candidate for the Pachakutik Indigenous Party, Yaku Perez, is out of the presidential race, which will be settled in the second round on April 11th. Perez obtained 19.38% of the votes. Meanwhile, some trade union and social organizations have announced they will join the Pachakutik indigenous mobilization, advancing from the south of the country towards Quito to demand a recount of the votes cast on February 7th after Perez claimed he was the victim of electoral fraud. In Argentina, revelations surrounding influence peddling by Health Minister Ginés González Garcia to gain access to COVID-19 vaccines have led to his resignation. The irregular conduct of the now former minister was made public by González himself during a radio interview with journalist Horacio Verbitsky, during which he said that he had received the vaccine thanks to a favor done by an official. President Alberto Fernandez asked the minister to submit his resignation through Cabinet Chief Santiago Cafiero. According to sources at the presidential palace, the current Secretary of Access to Health, Carla Visotti, is the main candidate to replace González. Well, students and other sectors continue to mobilize in Spain to condemn the imprisonment of rapper Pablo Hasél. Social organizations in at least 15 cities have called for peaceful street mobilizations to demand the release of the artist, while calling on the government to respect freedom of expression. The sentencing of the rapper for expressing his opinion about the Spanish monarchy has sparked widespread condemnation in Spain and abroad. Activists have also condemned the police repression of protesters. Russia has registered its third vaccine against the coronavirus called Covivac and promised to introduce the jab to the Russian population by March. It was produced by the state-run Chumakov Center based in Moscow, which employed a different method of development from Sputnik and Epivacorona, using an inactive virus.
Today we note that a third vaccine, Covivac, has been registered. It was developed by the Chumakov Center, and already in mid-March, the first 120,000 doses will be distributed within the civilian circulation. Today, Russia is the only country that has already 3 vaccines against the COVID-19.
Shifting gears now, 2 people have died after demonstrations in Gabon's 2 major cities as anger over restrictions aimed at curbing the spread of COVID-19 spilled over into the street protests. On Thursday night, security forces fired tear gas and stun grenades in some neighborhoods in the capital, Libreville and Port-Gentil, to disperse protesters who banged pots and had set up barricades, burning tires and debris. Gabon restricted travel in and out the capital city and expanded curfew hours to slow the spread of coronavirus infections last week. Moving on, the Tigray People's Liberation Front has laid out 8 conditions for beginning peace talks with the government. TPLF spokeswoman Leah Kassa outlined the group's preconditions for joining talks to end the 4 months of fighting on the Facebook page of Dimitsi Weyane TV, a station owned by the former ruling party. On November 4th, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed ordered airstrikes and a ground offensive against TPLF after its forces attacked federal army bases in the region. Abiy declared victory less than a month later after the TPLF withdrew from the regional capital Mekele and major towns, but low-level fighting continues. Now, Africa's 3rd largest airline, Kenya Airways, says it is ready to help governments on the continent to distribute COVID-19 vaccines. The airline's commercial manager said the airline has sufficient capacity and experience in handling fragile cargo that needs to be transported at cold storage conditions. Jabs earmarked for Africa risks spoilage if not transported within precise temperature ranges from ground handling to shipment and delivery. Kenya Airlines serves the major air hubs in Africa, has long-established routes to Europe, and on Friday introduced a flight to Delhi with an eye on business to ship Covishield, the Indian-made Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine.
KQ is 100% ready to offer the Kenyan government and many other African governments very robust solutions in the movement of the COVID-19 vaccines. The facility has a capacity to handle about 300 tons of pharma at a go. We actually, as I mentioned earlier, we intend to have a transit window of 6 hours maximum. So that means helps our churn of the product. And 300 tons is equivalent to 3 Boeing 747 freighters.
We're taking one last break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Mali's government has created a body to open talks with Islamist militants whose insurgency has made vast portions of the country ungovernable.
Since 2017, more and more voices in Mali are calling for dialogue with our brothers who have joined radical groups. This is a demand that has been expressed many times over. The second priority of the axis concerning the adoption of a social stability pact aims at dialoguing with radical groups in Mali. In addition to the elections, including those for the President of the Republic and deputies, it was decided, in accordance with Axis 6 of the Transition Roadmap, to adopt a new constitution by referendum.
Rescue services were deployed in the Indonesian capital Jakarta on Saturday to help evacuate people stranded by severe flooding after heavy rainfall. 193 neighborhoods in South and East Jakarta were submerged by floods as high as 1.8 meters, causing more than 1,300 people to flee. The floods were caused by heavy rainfall and overflowing rivers that crossed the main area of the capital. The Indonesian Meteorological Agency has warned that extreme weather, including heavy rain and strong winds, is expected to continue into the next few days and has asked residents in densely populated areas to remain vigilant.
I was so afraid of being swept away by the flood water. I could only take some clothes with me. At least I can change into them.
The flood water receded last night. By about midnight, many residents have cleared debris from their homes. But suddenly, another flash flood came. I chose to stay at home on the second floor with my wife and children.
Thousands of people in Myanmar continue to protest in the streets of Yangon against the recent military coup. Much of the country has been in uproar since troops deposed civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi on February 1st, with large street demonstrations in both urban centers and isolated villages. According to the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, nearly 550 people have been detained since the coup, including railway workers, civil servants and bank staff who have walked off their jobs as part of a civil disobedience campaign aimed at crippling the army's ability to govern. The country emerged from its sixth straight overnight internet curfew on Saturday, a measure imposed as neighborhoods around the country began setting up watch groups to guard against evening arrests.
The military said they would rule in democratic way, but at the same time, they immediately cut the internet connection and blocked social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter. That means their words don't match their actions, so we will never believe them. Young people have their dreams. 2019 was a year of development. 2020 was with COVID-19, and we all were thinking about how we will do in our future in 2021. But everyone is gone now. Everything we were hoping for is going to be destroyed. That's why more people are joining the protest than in the past.
Now, a police raid on a shipyard in Myanmar's second largest city, Mandalay, turned violent on Saturday when authorities opened fire on protesters gathering to stop arrests. At least 2 people were injured in the shooting, though it remained unclear if police were using live rounds or rubber bullets. People were seen running away or driving off quickly on motorcycles as shots were heard. Hundreds of anti-vaccine demonstrators gathered in Australia's main cities on Saturday ahead of the country's COVID-19 vaccine rollout on Monday. In Sydney, demonstrators marched in the streets with banners bearing anti-vaccination slogans, while in Brisbane, demonstrators gathered in a park to listen to speakers and singers. Police forces maintained a heavy presence in most cities, with some arrests made on a cricket pitch in Melbourne. More anti-vaccine demonstrations are planned in the coming days. And on that note, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I am Doris Polo. Thanks so much for watching.